Hi, you're listening to the Holistic Hippie RN. I'm Laura Gibby, your host, and today I have Kirsten Leo with me. She is a moon mentor who helps others harness the power of the moon into bringing the energy and enhancing and healing their lives and making huge moves forwards with their lives. Do you want to tell me a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I kind of got onto the more spiritual path in my 30s, around literally when I was 30. Prior to that, I was probably interested, but much more concerned with what I was doing in terms of work. I used to be a primary school teacher or elementary school teacher. I taught kindergarten for like 20 years. But it was around that 30 mark when a lot of people are having their Saturn returns around that, the 28 to 30, where, life did life. And I found myself kind of in connection with a beautiful woman who was a psychic medium who I went to for a reading. And she sat me down and very much straight up told me that this is who I was. I was this medium and I would be publicly speaking as I am now. And I just thought, no way, that is not my path. I just, left kind of like that was a waste of my time. But then slowly but surely, I just started cracking open to the more spiritual path. And now she was exactly right. This is what I do. I have a beautiful collective where there are a lot of light workers on there and we work together. I do still do readings for people, but one of my biggest passions bringing into the field in terms of what I do and what I can contribute is working with the moon. It's probably one of the very first spiritual practice I began to adopt. And, so for 15 years, this practice has sustained me. And now it's so beautiful that I get to share that with others, being their mentor throughout all the moon cycles that we work on. And like you said, it's an opportunity for us to stop, to reflect, and then to ultimately empower ourselves so that we are consistently evolving and expanding and being really in alignment with what it is that we want, but also what it is that is so right for us and our expansion. So lots of people will use the buzzword manifesting, and manifesting is really fun, but manifesting is something that we do naturally all the time. And so really how you use the moon to manifest is you use it to be constantly curating your most authentic self and your highest vibration. And then you don't have to try so hard to manifest or get that comes naturally.
That's so cool. So I love that. How did you start getting into the moon, like studying about moon energy, and like how did the moon kind of intrigue you? How were you drawn to that? Because I think it's such a unique area, and that's what I love about it. Like I love moon stuff, and so I think it's such a cool area. What kind of initiated that for you?
This is something I've never told anybody. So being really open here, but ever since I was a little girl and even well into my teenage years, I was a very wish upon a star type girl. So literally every night, I remember the biggest time that I really did it. I probably did it as a little girl, but I remember when I was about 14 or 15, I had the biggest crush on this boy, and he was a bit older than me, and everyone knew I had a crush on this boy, and everyone would tell me he would never date me because he was quite a bit older than me, like quite a bit. Like I was 15, he was 19, which is quite a bit when you're that age.
Yeah.
But every night I would wish upon a star that he would ask me out, and he absolutely did. And we were together for years. Like it was so beautiful. So I think that was probably my first interaction. And now that I am a teacher of metaphysics, I know that was just really about intending. That was really aligning with my desire. It was being so clear on what I wanted that all those voices, I heard them, but they didn't really matter. And I also knew there was an essence of surrender to the process, that by wishing on a star was that surrendering it. Like, this is what I want, but however it can happen. And so without knowing it, I was already embodying a lot of the characteristics that energetically we use to teach people how to be in alignment with their dreams. And so I guess had started there. I can't even remember the exact moment where I decided that this was my path. I did start to sit a lot, so meditation was really important. And I think just being an intuitive, you can label that psychic medium, being whatever you want, but you're so sensitive to energies that I could just naturally feel it. And then I thought, why the hell am I not using it? And I remember the beautiful woman that sat me down for that reading, I actually started to sit in meditation with her. And I remember once saying to her, like, you know how like when you tap into this energy and you're channeling and you know stuff, isn't it like cheating? Isn't it, because we can kind of tap into, you wouldn't ethically, but you can kind of know what's coming up for yourself. Isn't that kind of cheating? And she's like, well, no, it's just who you are. Like, why wouldn't you use it? So if someone can naturally run fast, they shouldn't go in the race.
Right.
And so I was like, oh, and so I thought, well, I actually intuitively feel the moon. So why wouldn't I use its energy to really enhance my experiences just through self-inquiry and observation and reflection? And then once, I did a little bit of research into moon phases and what each moon kind of represents, I just went from there and I made it really my own practice. So yes, there is that Western astrology flavor to what I do in terms of, planets and their meanings, but most of it is just purely channeled. And so I feel like I'm getting these really clear, precise understanding of what each moon has to offer. And since doing it, I know like how it builds up. So it's like a process of evolving or a process of self-development every new and full moon. And so for me, it was just like something I naturally did. I didn't think about it too heavily until I began speaking about it publicly and then offering it to people because they were asking for some guidance around it.
That's really cool. So I know we're at a new moon. What moon are we leaving and what moon are we going into?
Okay, so the moon cycle lasts for about 29.5 days. And within that moon cycle, it begins on a new moon. So we are in a new moon at the moment in beautiful, exciting, childlike Sagittarius. So when the moon cycle starts, it's when basically we can't see the moon. So it's the dark side of the moon because the sun's light is not shining upon it, like it's blocked. So we say that this is a wonderful time for us to set intentions. So think about it or conceptualizing it like deep, dark soil. So if that soil is us, like our lives, the idea of working with the moon is that we're constantly toiling that soil. We want that soil to be as nutrient dense and lush and fertile and like so delicious. When you put your hand in like really yummy soil as opposed to dirt. So the only difference is that that's been toiled and it's been given what it needs. So when you work with the moon consistently, your soil or your energetic life, which includes your mental capacity, so your mind, so your thoughts, which create your emotions, which creates your frequency and so on. So it's all connected. So we use this moon membership to toil that soil. So at a new moon, what we do is we plant the seeds of intention. So we think about, okay, what is it over the next 29.5 days that I'm really intending for myself? And this is where that personal development aspect and the discipline comes from. So people often start a new year as we're about to start a new year and say, right, I've got these resolutions. I'm going to become fit and I'm going to pursue my dream career. And come February, they are literally still on their couch. No shame, because it's hard. This is why working with the moon is so fun, because you can just intend something perceptionally small and it's not grand, but those are the things that create the most amazing kingdom that you can live in, block by block, stone by stone. And so when you set an intention, I always say to my moon members, intentions are not wishes. So like I wished on a star for that guy to ask me out, an intention is so different. An intention is a call to action.
Mhm.
An intention is like a promise you make to yourself. And so when you sit under a new moon, you'll also be sitting under all the energy that's swirling around. So the idea of working with the moon is that you know what that energy is in the universe and what the universe is up to. And then you work with that energy in order to enhance. So let's just say you have this beautiful soil in your garden and you're like, oh, my soil is so beautiful. I'm going to plant sunflower seeds. And you plant it in the total wrong season. Now, I'm not a gardener, so I don't know when you're supposed to plant seeds. But let's just say the wrong season is autumn, right? So you plant the seeds in autumn and you're like, oh, they just never grow. I'm not a good gardener. Maybe sunflowers are just not for me. My neighbor has sunflowers. Why did they have sunflowers? And I'm doing the work. I'm toiling my soil. And it's like, oh, because you did it in the wrong season, doll. Of course you can have sunflowers. So it's really about using the energy that is on offer and working with the universe. We humans, I think, are just so obsessed with being salmon and swimming upstream. We love it. Because when we do that, I think we do that for two reasons. One, we're told life should be hard. We're conditioned that way. And secondly, when it doesn't work out, we can say, see, it's the river's fault. And so I'm like, oh my God, can we just not be salmon? Can we just be turtles and like float with the current? It's so much more fun. So really that's what we're doing when we harness the energy. So back to your question, went on a bit of a tangent there, but
I love
we
it.
are we are sitting under a new moon in Sagittarius. So do you want me to go into the energy and let you know what the vibe is right now? Okay. Sagittarius energy. Now I'm Sag rising. So this is probably the fun part of my personality, probably the only fun part of my personality. But Sagittarius energy is all about let's go on an adventure or let's do it. And people will say like, oh no, you don't do it because you might get in trouble. And they're like, if we get in trouble, we'll just apologize. It's better just to go for it and ask for permission later or whatever it is. So Sagittarius energy is really fun. It's really expansive. It wants to be on a quest for truth, for meaning, and for growth and expansion. And so at this full moon, now, in terms of what we're working on in the lead up, so we've just been through a big eclipse season this year. And really what we've been working on, and we've seen this theme over and over again, is that we've been on the moon membership working on our sovereignty. So it's all been about like, who are you? Step into your power. What does it mean to be in your power? What does it mean to show up for yourself, to work on yourself? In your sovereignty, what would you choose to do? And so all of that kind of work that we've been doing, new moon in, full moon out, we've been working on that self-identity. So really that slow and purposeful, gentle work has allowed us to really understand our own personal power, to define who it is we are, so that we can have a great impact when we interact with others outside in the world. So this new moon in Sagittarius is actually going to provide us with this enthusiasm and go-getter energy that we can confidently go out into the world and be expansive and abundant and set intentions that really have the potential to be so long lasting, because we're going to commit to that. Like, what does that look like in our life? So really optimistic time, really expansive time. And although usually people think that at the start of the year, we look towards our future, actually this new moon is the time where you need to go, actually, what are my dreams for the future? Neptune is hanging around this moon in Pisces. Pisces is like the watery, mystical, intuitive sign. And Neptune's like here in Pisces to really be like, okay, what is your most vivid, beautiful, crazy dream for the future? And Sagittarius is like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go for it. And next year in January, actually, Pluto's going to enter into Aquarius. So you might have been hearing about the age of Aquarius that's coming. Be there for 9 months, dip back into Capricorn for a couple of months. But then the next 21 years is going to be about this. It's going to be about who it is are you showing up in the world to contribute to the world, not to take from the world. Like, I'm going to go out and get a job so I can earn heaps of money and I'm going to squirrel it away and live in a mansion and by myself. With like, no, it's actually about who are you going to be in this world to contribute to others and have them contribute to you. And it's going to be like Woodstock, but not like Woodstock at all. The concept maybe of Woodstock. So really,
Freedom.
yeah, freedom, total freedom. And true freedom isn't about having options or doing whatever you like. Real freedom is actually the courage to be who it is you truly are. And so at this new moon in Sagittarius, we're being asked, you are free to be you. So who are you? And that you that we've been curating and working on in your own sovereignty and really claiming that personal power, what are you going to do with it? Like, what is this versions of you, your version of you's biggest dreams? And as we grow and evolve, we all know our dreams change. And so here's a time to stop and go, we've got a whole year ahead of us. We've had a bit of a stagnant year in 2023. 2024, things are going to get moving. We're moving into fire energy of a 9-year. So things are really going to start to happen. And so here we are going to intend to really commit to our big dreams. It's all going to be about our purpose, our contribution, the connections that we make with other people, the ways in which we want to evolve. Saturn is going to be swirling around it too. Saturn is very spiritual. So really a lot of people like notice around you maybe start to be talking about more spiritual concepts. People might be saying things like, oh, I think next year I might want to learn to meditate or take up yoga. And really spirituality is just connection to your truth, to yourself, hence freedom. And so this is a great new moon to intend to stick to spiritual practices that really enhance the connection that you have with yourself. So at this full moon, you might be setting an intention to show up to your yoga classes. You might be setting an intention to sit in a 5-minute morning meditation, completely envisioning this future version of you. So it literally becomes part of you because you start to subconsciously reprogram your mind. So basically, this energy is really exciting. This new moon. New moons are usually a really exciting time because it's when we can start afresh. It's like, okay, that month's done or whatever. So what intentions are we setting that we're ultimately learning from the past? We're shaking off from the past and we're beginning again.
I think so. I think too, it's interesting how you say, how you mentioned kind of like, okay, that moon might be done. And now I have like a reset in a way. It's like a mini reset 12 to 13 times a year, depending. And
yeah,
I think that's interesting how you mentioned that too, in the sense of like the not understanding the moon energy, how we absorb it differently than if we learn about it like you teach, and have that guidance on how to actually harness it, is totally different, because then we might view the last moon a little less chaotic, things like that.
For sure. And like you no doubt, like observe this just for fun as you're kind of, having a lot of maybe holiday parties or catch ups with colleagues and friends in different contexts, and not the day-to-day context. Then we have to actually start having conversations about our lives, right? So we're trying to, be social. You just keep an ear out for people that are telling you like, oh, I'm so done with 2023. I can't wait for next year. You know what? Next year, I'm really thinking about maybe, becoming sober. I'm really thinking about taking a trip to or going on a retreat, or I'm really thinking about that. So the moon is affecting them. These are the conversations that will be happening. But because for example, also what Uranus is doing in terms of affecting this awakening within us and all the stuff that's going on right now, you can just nod your head, and like really encourage them, because that's exactly what they should be doing. But they don't necessarily know why they're doing it. And I think because they don't know the why, it's like you don't stick to it. So if you turn up to a personal trainer at the gym and the personal trainer says, okay, so every time you finish a workout, I want you to walk on an incline for 20 minutes. And you're like, okay, I'll do it because they told me to do it. That might last like a week, maybe 2, maybe a month if you're a really disciplined person. But if you don't know why you're doing that and the impact it's having on your body, that won't last.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is why we look at the universal or cosmic energy that's happening and be like, oh, okay, this is the vibe. Let's be a turtle. Let's float with it. Let's work with it to really amplify it so we can go forward. A big part of this new moon is looking at our own personal frequency. So I'm sure you and your listeners know all about the work of people like Dr. Joe Dispenza that talk about this. And so as we set intentions at this new moon, we're going to be looking at our personal frequency because of where Uranus is placed and at this new moon. But also we're going to be looking at, okay, so if our thoughts create our emotions, which create our frequency, what conditioned thoughts do I have or I hold about my dream life? Like, let's just say you're starting to think that your dream life isn't working for a bank. Or what happened to me at 30? What if my dream life wasn't teaching kindergarten, but I loved it? I loved my old career. And I have such a deep reverence for it. But it wasn't really what I was here to do. It was kind of what I was here to do because it was service, it was holding, it was teaching, it was,
And kids
lots
are
of
kind of
love.
magical even, when you're
Yeah.
teaching, it's like teaching magic in a way. And now you're teaching like universal magic.
Oh, that's so
Really
nice. I
cool.
love that. I love that. So like if that's where you are now, like where I was then, you'd be using this moon to go, okay, so I've been so conditioned to be like, be a teacher.
Mhm.
It's secure. This is what's going to provide for you.
Mhm.
And then you have to be able to really question those thoughts to be able to shift your vibration to what is next for you, that next thing that you desire.
That's cool. And what's interesting too, how you say it's like, you're kind of reflecting on yourself personally more with this new moon. It's a great lead up to the year ending, even where it's like we have a lot of reflection going on, but it's great to start there in like your personal self and then build out for that next year that's like a bigger space. And the other thing I wanted to ask you actually was about what would be an intent that you would suggest would be a really good one to set around this new moon if it's where you want to be a little more introspective.
Totally depends on personally what you're working at and personally where you are at in life. If you've never worked with the moon before, I would probably just be setting an intention around curiosity.
Oh, I like that.
So I'd be setting an intention to say, okay, you know what? I intend to be open to being really curious about myself, about who I was, who I am now, and more importantly, who it is that I actually truly desire to be. Now, this sounds like a really lovely question, but it's a really scary question. It's a really big question.
It is.
And so it's not an intention of, right, I'm going to commit to my purpose. Like I hear that all the time. People come to me all the time for readings and say, what is my purpose? And I'll be like, oh my gosh, purpose. You have so many purposes. Like it's not a one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, it doesn't even matter the form that you live out your purpose, just so long as it feels really delicious and authentic to you. And if we're coming from a programming that's so conditioned, you can't just overnight snap out of that. I found out at 30 that this was my path. It took me a few years to accept it. And then it took me another 8 to actually work it to leave education.
Oh, wow.
So it didn't happen overnight. And I'm so appreciative of myself for having the patience to carefully curate and to wait for when it is right on a mental level, on an emotional level, and on a human level in terms of money and security and all those things. So what if we just intended curiosity about our dream life? Let's just be curious about it. Let's not judge it. Sagittarius energy is here to help us do that. Let's not judge it. We've got a full moon coming up in a couple of weeks that will help us balance this out. But I would be setting that intention, an intention of curiosity.
That's a great intention. I don't think enough people are curious a lot of times. There's a lot of curious people, and they just look lit up by the world when they're curious. And then there's a lot of people that haven't quite gotten there to being like, oh, like I have so many questions now. So this new moon's leading up to the upcoming full moon. How about the full moon? What would you describe the energy between the new moon leading into the full moon? I guess, like, I know you mentioned Sagittarius. What can people kind of expect going from this moon towards the full moon?
So at the new moon, if that's the start of our lunar cycle where we set intentions in the lead up to a full moon, what we're really doing is actioning those intentions and really committing to it. Because unless we commit to that curiosity, like maybe curiosity for you is 5 minutes every day, you're going to daydream. Just daydream. That's it. And you might draw your daydreams, you might journal your daydreams, or you just might daydream. I'm going to daydream about my dream life. And now I want to clarify, actually. Dream life isn't like the external things. It's like, who are you in your dream life? That's a really important distinction. So that's what we're doing in the lead up to the full moon. So the full moon is like peak energy of the lunar cycle, which is why most people refer to a full moon when they're talking about moon cycles, because we feel it. So the moon is big and bright because the sun's light is shining right upon it. And so basically at a full moon, we say, okay, the light is now shining upon your intentions, right? So it's going to uncover anything that doesn't align with your intentions. So at a full moon, what we traditionally do is we release. So we give up, we let go of things that are hindering our commitment to, dedication to, or blocking us really expanding in our intentions. Sometimes it can be, oh, I've set this intention, and now that I've kind of, played with it, and I can see under the light of the full moon, that is so not my intention. It can really reveal that, oh, maybe I intended from this place of ego or fear, as opposed to curiosity, expansion, love, that kind of energy. So our full moon in Cancer, now I have to warn you guys, okay? It's going to be on Christmas Day, Boxing Day, depending on where you are. It's a full moon in Cancer. Cancer, okay, I'm Cancer sun, so this is like my season. This is my month, right? Cancer energy, as many of you will know, is very emotional. It's very sentimental. And so what this full moon will bring out for us is actually a lot of emotions about what we've been dreaming about. So let's just say you've spent 2 weeks leading up to the full moon envisioning your dream life. You might be having a lot of emotions, maybe about regret that you haven't looked at this before. You might be feeling really afraid, like, this can't be for me. This will never happen for me. You might be having big, deep emotional reckonings with yourself, thinking, oh, if I want this, that means all of this has to go. So what we'll be doing at the full moon is we just be looking at the emotions that are coming up, that are triggered by this intention that we set, whatever your intention is. And we'd be like, okay, that emotion is about a thought about our intention. So we would be either releasing the emotion associated, going, I don't need to feel afraid. Yeah, I don't know how it's going to work out. Yeah, I think I'm about to blow my life up next year and it's going to look totally different. And that's freaking me out. But do you know what? I've survived everything to this point. What makes me think I won't survive it going forward? And to actually allow yourself to go, okay, I give that up. Now that too, like an intention is a call to action, so too is a release. You don't just sit under a full moon and go, okay, I release my fear. And then you wake up the next morning and you're like ready to go to battle and you just don't care. Like, no, it's a commitment that you're making. But I will actually, I do want to warn you guys about one particular aspect that everyone needs to be aware of. So at the new moon that we've just talked about, Mercury, the planet of communication, it rules technology, it's going to go into retrograde. So when a planet is in retrograde, it just slows down the energy. So it's nothing to fear. People freak out, and go, oh no, but it's fine. It's just a matter of time to slow down. I think of retrogrades as so rethink, reorganize, reconsider, recheck, just chill out. So chill out around communication, technology, planning, travel, all that kind of stuff. So if you're traveling for the holidays, check everything, like be like Santa, check it twice, right? So, but just know that a lot of miscommunications can happen in Mercury retrograde. What are most of us doing in this Mercury retrograde? Hanging around probably our biggest triggers, our family. Yeah. So just be really mindful that at Christmas time, we have a full moon in Cancer. So everyone's emotions are going to be bubbling. And we're in Mercury retrograde. Basically, I'm expecting a lot of family fights. People saying things that they don't really mean, or that people are hearing things that other people are saying in a different way. Think about it like as women, like, let's just be really honest. Often it's a hormonal thing that when we're, on our cycle, that our emotions are a little bit heightened purely because of all those hormones that are going through our body that really help us in areas of our lives. But it's like that, but everyone will be feeling that. So when you're around family, when people say things that are a little bit triggering or a little bit rude, just know that they're also under this moon. They're also in this energy, and they might not be as conscious. So actually, an intention that I'm setting in this new moon is to hold a lot of grace and space for my family.
That's a good one.
Because I can do that. You know why I can do that? Because I totally am so empowered in myself. So I'm almost expecting to go to Christmas and spend time with my family, who I love dearly. And they're probably going to say some stupid crap to me. They're probably going to say some judgmental crap to me because they're sitting in all this heightened full moon in Cancer emotion. They're probably really afraid for me around something. They're probably really feeling shameful for themselves around something. And so they're going to say something. I'm going to hear it differently. And I have to make a conscious call to action choice to not allow myself to be affected by that. Now, there's the fine line between like abuse and that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about that. And maybe this is a full moon where you say, do you know what? Cancerian's really nurturing, loving, homely. Cancerian loves family. So we'll all be wanting to be around our family, but maybe you need to choose who your family is in these holidays. If it is really triggering to a detriment to you and your mental health, but you can also turn up. And if someone says something to you that maybe isn't as evolved or as kind as maybe they deep down in their souls intend it, that you can just thank you for that. Oh, I hear your concern, or just don't respond at all. I'm a teacher, so I love to give them the teacher look, like, did you really just say that? And just carry on. So this is why knowing universal energy is always going to help you. And the moon's energy. So the reason I chose the moon, probably going back to your original question, is because the moon is so magnetic. It affects the tides. It changes the formation of the seas and the currents. It's literally magnetism itself. We are mostly water. So our body composition is about 60% water, but our organs, like our brain, oh gosh, I'm going to say 90% water, but it's probably wrong, but I'm no scientist. Oh, you're probably better at that. But the percentage of our main organs that are water is huge. So of course we're affected by the magnetic pull of the moon. Of course people go crazy and howl at it when it's full. So this is why having this knowledge in your back pocket not only informs your own evolving, enhances your own experience of yourself, keeps you accountable to your intentions, to your goals, bit by bit, like brick by brick. But it also allows you to dance with the energy of other people. Because no matter how evolved you are, or how spiritual you are, or how wonderful you are, you live in a world where some people just are not open to that are just so in their egos and so in fear. And so you have to be able to interact with these people, not in a judgmental or teachy or preachy way, but in a way where you just be the light and you hold that grace and space for them.
Mhm.
So that is also the huge advantage of working with the moon consistently.
Mhm. It helps you understand some of the underlying things that pop up from people. Like you said, more people, there might be more things people say that they might not even mean to be hurtful from in the holidays this season. And it just like, it gives you a really big awareness. It feels like there's a huge awareness of how you would like to show up in your life, but also how when other people show up the way they do, it's not necessarily just them being a certain way all the time. That's
We're
really,
so programmed to be offended.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the reason that there's a really good reason for that, it's because if we're attacked, not to in our ancestral history, that means death.
Yeah.
So we're really heightened and sensitive to perceived attacks.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you know the energy that we're all sitting under, that what is potentially could turn into something triggering, then you can just dance around it and play with it, because you know, yes, you're physically safe. Like someone telling you, oh, that sounds like a ridiculous career choice that you're thinking about as you share your visions and dreams. By the way, do not share your visions and dreams. That's the most perfect way to allow really low vibe energy to come into them. So there's your first tip. But just so you do, guys, I'm thinking of going back to school next year and studying naturopathy. And your dad or your uncle at the table goes, how ridiculous. There's no future in that, blah, 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 or whatever. So you can really like dance with that and be like, oh, like maybe it is ridiculous, because you're so empowered within yourself, because you know yourself really well. You know what's right for you. And you can see clearly, like, of course, that doesn't seem right to them because they've done for decades what has worked for them, which we know isn't going to work moving forward. But they don't need to know that. They're not moving forward with us. Like, they're older. Like, and so you can kind of just play with it instead of being, my family never support me, blah. Like, no, you don't need it. You just, and you know what's really interesting? People often ask me, how do your family respond to what you do? I come
Mm.
from a very traditional family. You know, I was brought up Catholic, still Catholic. Like, I love the tradition of the church. Not all the traditions, obviously, but um, and so how did your parents cope with that? And do you know what? I didn't ask them. I didn't really even tell them. I just shared with them the things that I was experiencing. And it's because it's so aligned with my truth and my authenticity.
Mhm.
They don't question it because they can see how fulfilled and happy I am, that they just naturally support me. My mum will say, I'm a Reiki master. So my mum will say, do that thing you do with your hands. And it's just, it's so amazing what happens when you do really show up in your
Mhm.
light. And that beautiful saying, I'm not going to quote it perfectly, but we don't bring others along with us by just telling them or dragging them.
Mm.
You just be the light, and you'll be so shocked at the amount of people that will be so inspired and follow you.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Um, what would, so you have a membership that has to do with the moon on a whole nother topic, because now that you've been telling me about the moon, I'm like, oh, now I want to know like how you guide people in your membership as far as,
Okay, for sure.
yeah.
So I have a membership. It's like you pay by month, so you can join whenever you like, quit whenever you like, no problem. And it is at a really low price point for what it is. And I just want to flag that, because my intention behind it is that anyone can access it. If you're listening to this in the US, it is charged in Australian dollars, so it's even cheaper for you because the Australian dollar is so crap against the US dollar. So bonus points if you're in the US. But basically, it's a monthly membership where at every full moon and every new moon, you get a set of resources to guide you through it. Many people will hold online moon circles or in-person moon circles, and they are beautiful. But I made a really conscious choice not to make it a live membership, because I want people to empower themselves. I want people to make the committed, disciplined choice to themselves to actually be in charge of their own vibrational frequency and their own development. I give you all the resources to guide you and help you do that. but you're the one that has to open your membership portal. You're the one that has to read or listen to the guidance. You're the one that has to do the ritual. And when you do it, you are so owning it. And that's going to have the most effective impact on you. I've held moon circles in the past and they're so beautiful, but it's like a nice experience as opposed to an integrated, really powerful way. So on the moon membership, there's 2 levels. So there's a basic membership and there's a premium membership. On both of those levels, you get a podcast style, me talking through the energy of the moon, and attached that is a meditation, guided meditation that you can do at that new or full moon. If you're a premium member, you also get a really long, detailed workbook where I have a written synopsis of the moon. I go through the moon phases, like, okay, in the lead up to the new moon, this is what you should be doing. At the new moon, this is what you do after that. And then I have a ritual planned out for you. So here's your ritual, and then resources to go with that. So I give you journal prompts at every full and new moon directed to the energy. So we're working on a specific theme. So this specific theme for the new moon in Sagittarius is our vibrational frequency. I would imagine, haven't written it yet, but the full moon in Cancer will probably be something around, emotional masters. So really looking at our emotions and having them help us rather than hinder us. So you get journal prompts, you get a page of affirmations to say, and usually I integrate that into your ritual, and you get a page-long incantation, so like a declaration statement that you can say in your ritual. So it's literally an opportunity twice a month to sit with yourself, to check in with yourself, to keep accountable to yourself. If you're busy and you kind of just don't get to it, it's no problem, because it's so cheap that it's like not an issue that if you miss it. And you can dip into it. Obviously, I would advise that you are consistent with your practice, because any consistency is going to really allow the changes to happen. But that is how you can work with me in that way. So we'd love to see you there, making some real big magic with the moon.
Yeah, I think it would be neat to see even throughout the whole year. I mean, longer than a year, obviously, but just seeing the transitions from month to month throughout the whole year, just as far as like how, 1, where you start from, and 2, where you grow to, of understanding. I mean, it sounds like even you would wind up understanding yourself on such a deep level, and not only that, but others, because it's kind of like you're not only learning about this energy, you're learning about yourself and how to better your life through that, which I think is so cool.
Oh, for sure. And next year is going to be so good. So a lot of people are talking about, or a lot of spiritual teachers are talking about, this split between the 3D and the 5D. And what that actually just really means is people that have this awareness, the self-awareness and that consciousness, that understand like things like frequency and the moon and are working with the cycles of nature, are going to be so abundant. Like, we're going to explode. And the 3D people, still fine, still doing their thing, but it's just going to be like harder for them. And so there's just going to be like a more obvious split. The astrology of next year is so cool. I mean, it's the start of that age of Aquarius, where there's going to be so much change in the way in which we do things, and societies and money and all the things, and how it's structured. Around like May to June is so abundant. It's so romantic. It's so like, if you are in your authenticity, if you are on your path, if you have been like doing the work up until then and know who you are, oh my gosh, you're going to align with the most perfect people, romantically, friendship wise, tribe wise, work wise. Like, there's just so much on offer next year that wasn't really on offer this year. This year was a slog. We had huge eclipses. We were a bit stagnant. We were like laying so many foundations that it was so boring. And it felt like hard work. Whereas next year, the momentum is so, like, if you're going to get on it, because if you want to like kind of like soar, now's the time. Use the energy. Like I said, use the cosmic energy as opposed to going against it.
That is so cool. Yeah, I'm really excited for next year. Actually, when you were saying how when you listen to people, if they say, "Oh, I'm so glad that this year's over," 2023 is over and like listen to kind of what they're saying. It's so interesting because someone literally just said that yesterday. And I was kind of like, it wasn't too bad, but it wasn't, it was kind of like just there. And so it's interesting that you say that because it sounds like 2024 is going to be like a really cool year, which is just, I don't know, that's just so exciting to see things like take a velocity and start like really flowing and aligning more than, this year was great. Don't get me wrong. This year was a beautiful year. It had all of its beauties in it, but it's neat to see things like start snowballing in a good way, like in a big.
Yeah, exactly. There's just forward moving momentum, but because it's fire energy, it can also be really destructive. So lots of destruction will happen. Like, it'll probably be, especially in the US, around where your Pluto line runs through, it'll be around your financial systems. A lot will be just like falling apart and like burnt down. Actually, the astrologist on the Light Path Collective explained to me beautifully yesterday. She said, like, this year was about building foundations. And so if you really know yourself, you can build yourself like as a building that has a lot of sway in it. So when things happen, like when your uncle says to you, oh, that's ridiculous what you're thinking, you got some sway. You're like, you know what, you're not like, but when you're rigid and like the earthquake happens, you're falling down. So this year was about building ourselves to have a lot of sway and confidence in ourselves. So next year, when certain amounts of destruction happen, we just sway with it. We're not going to crumble. And that's when you'll see that 3D and 5D people, the people that like, oh my gosh, I've lost everything. Oh, nothing works the way it used to. You just nod your head and send them love because they're people that have not done the work on themselves. We don't judge. We're just like, oh, doll, it could be so easy. And just send them a lot of love and then get on with your life and sway with what is going on as well. That's why it's going to be so expansive, because our buildings will survive.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that analogy too. That is
it was such a good one. On that episode will come out late in January, where our astrologist talks through the year that's coming up. So you can kind of get that preview and realize, oh, this is why I need to be on top of myself. So as these things kind of transpire, I can harness the opportunity as opposed to crumbling.
Well, and it's such a good thing, again, going back to being aware of everything, it's such a good thing when you're aware of it, and then you're working on yourself even more like than you have been, because you realize where you're at.
It's like you don't go eat a salad once and you're skinny, right? So this is the same thing. We have to be disciplined with ourselves. And the age of Aquarius is about personal accountability. Again, which is why I don't do live moon circles. It's like you don't just show up and have a nice time. I mean, it would be nice, but no, this is about like real curated work. Like, let's do the work. You are responsible for creating your great life. No more Nepo babies.
I like how you pointed out too a lot about committing to yourself, like making the commitment for yourself. And like, that just strengthens more ties with yourself, even in the sense of like you're honoring who you are because you want to do the work on yourself. And I think that's just so awesome.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else you want to add?
Just to remind whoever is listening to this that you are way more powerful and capable and full of so much more potential than you could ever imagine. You didn't come here just to slide by. You came here at this time to contribute, to enjoy. And so allow yourself the permission to use what's on offer. Like, commit to your turtle era where you flow with the universe, where you harness its energy and allow yourself to propel yourself forward, to get really curious about how amazing you truly are and how expansive you truly are, and not to be afraid of that anymore.
Oh, I love that. Where's a good place if people want to connect with you and find you on social media, or what's the best place for people to come across you?
If you're wanting to join the Moon membership, head to the lightpathcollective.com. You'll see it in the top menu bar there. you can connect with me on Instagram at The Light Path Collective. I also have podcasts. So if you're a podcast person, well, you must be if you're listening to this, The Light Path Podcast with Kirsten Leo. We're coming back for season 2 in January. So there's like over 100 episodes there that you can dip into over the holidays if that's where you're at. TikTok, The Light Path Collective. I think that's it.
And I'll include all of that in the notes too, so people can, links are nice, they're quick. So
Exactly.
yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming and being here today. I really want to learn a lot more about the moon, to be honest. That was really interesting. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you for holding space. I mean, what you do and literally just putting it out there, it takes a lot of courage to do that, and to see and listen and interact with someone who is also just curious about their path, their purpose, and their potential. That is literally all you're doing. So I just really honor that in you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, take care and talk soon.
Bye.
Bye.